Lunch and Learn today. We're going to be talking on stress management, but feel free to ask questions as I go along. I'd like it to be interactive and make sure it's really tailored to what you've come for. I don't want you leaving here today and thinking, well, I didn't really get what I wanted out of today's session. So a little bit about me. So I actually have a corporate background. I started my corporate career as a chemical engineer, and then I did 15, 16 years in the mining services industry. And I found, as much as I was getting more responsibility and I guess enjoyed some different challenges, I walked across sales, marketing, project management, business management, there was still something unfulfilled, and that was I wasn't doing what I was truly passionate about. It was healthcare, and I finally decided, well, it's time to embrace what I love and do what I love, like the WeWork slogan, do what you love. And I went back and studied and I did a Bachelor of Complementary Medicine, and now I'm finishing a degree. I've got another 3 months before I finish a degree in nutrition and dietetic medicine. So that's me, and I just love doing what I'm doing, which is sharing my knowledge with you. Is there anything particular that you've come today for? Other than to increase your awareness about stress, get some coping mechanisms. Yep.
Just awareness.
Okay. Question. It all starts with awareness, and this is why it's the first thing you're going to cover. Because a lot of the time we can actually go and travel along and not realise how stressed we are if we're not aware. We just think we can normalise it too. We can just think, oh, that's just normal. Everyone else is like this, it's just normal. And that normalisation can be to our detriment long term. So there's food here.
Really, thank you.
So then I'm going to go through, after creating that awareness, we'll go through some coping strategies and then onto more preventative stuff so that we can better manage our stress. It's much better with the workshop. So in terms of awareness, our stress response is a normal response. The problem with today is we never get out of it. We live in a stressful way of being. And this is problematic. This is what our body's not used to. Our body's used to having a stress response and then switching it off, and then having it being in that, what they call the parasympathetic state, which is our rest and digest state. So our body is designed to switch between the two states, autonomic states. The problem is today we live in this fight or flight response, which is a sympathetic nervous system dominant state. And what that is good for some things, which I'm going to get to, but it's not so good for others. So our body turns on certain things to enable us to get away from the danger, and then it will turn off certain things that are not necessary for us to get away from the danger. We don't need to operate those things. So the body is very smart in terms of how it works with us, and it's what I'm going to go through is this long term is not going to serve any of us. We end up with chronic diseases. What happens, we produce stress hormones. So you've probably heard of the adrenaline response, that nervousness, that heart palpitations, the shallow breathing, the rapid breathing. We start to sweat. These are all the things that we need to switch on in order to get away from that threat. Which, today's threats are like deadlines. So we've got work deadlines, commitments. Or those things can be just this excessive busyness. We live in this busy world. We want to be doing and seeing with this person, that fear of missing out. So this is what our body does. We produce that noradrenaline, the adrenaline. Another stress response is released from our kidneys, which is from our adrenal glands, which is cortisol. And this cortisol, how it works in the body, is it turns off certain functions and turns on others. So some of the things that are suppressed is like our immune system. Obviously, to get away from that tiger, the body hasn't got the energy to fight some infection. we don't need to be happy to get away from a tiger, so we lose that ability to stabilise our moods. And you'll generally find that you are more moodier when you're stressed, because that serotonin is down-regulated, and we step up all the excitatory neurons, like the adrenaline. So our body's just shifting in terms of what we're making, in terms of neurotransmitters. It obviously dumps down that pain sense. So under extreme stress, we can not feel like, so if we get bitten by that tiger, we can still keep running or whatever we can do to get away. This is why you hear of all these stories of people getting attacked by a shark and they still swim and all this sort of stuff. We've got this amazing response to adapt and get away from that danger. And then things that are turned on, obviously that blood pressure, we need to get more blood and oxygen to our muscles. We've got this heightened state, but in this heightened state, what is lost is that creativity sense. So we don't need that creative, because all I need, that threat's there, I just need to go that direction. I don't need to think of anything creative, I just need to go that opposite direction to the threat. So yes, we're more heightened, we're more alert, but we've got no creative. So if you're in the creative world and you've got deadlines, that doesn't work well. And obviously we need to get sugar or glucose to the muscles so that they can work, so they've got energy to work. And this is why we have this surge of low glucose when we're stressed. This is the body's response to stress.
Heightened memory, that's interesting, because, as in, for instance, when you're at a critical point, you do remember that feeling, right? But at the same time, when you're in the moment, you don't know much, you just only know, I've got to get it done.
Yes.
So that's why, I'm thinking, does memory really come into play in that sense then? Because you'll remember the feeling.
Yeah.
But you won't be able to retrace the whole situation. It's just going to be, I don't know how I did it. I just did it.
Yeah.
So,
and then you'll have those situations, so when trauma happens to us, it's a traumatic event, we have a very significant, so some people will, and this is the thing, like getting back to here, some people have this fight response where they'll tackle the stress, others have this thing where they run away from it. And so what you're talking about is quite an individual, how you respond to a stress. You might, your memory just blatants it out. Others have a very heightened memory to, they can actually relive every single second of that moment, and they carry that, with them. Whereas, it's individual and the situation. So this is, we get this alarm that, we've got this deadline, or my boss wants this, or no, you start panicking. So we go into this stress response, which we're able to, hold this level of stress, and our body can maintain stress for long periods of time. But it gets to a point where it leads to exhaustion, and this is what today's all about, is obviously allowing you to, go between here and then not be alarmed, to go to that rest and digest state. But it's not just keep driving down here. So really wanting you to be able to, arm you with tools so that you can get out of this stress response when you choose, as opposed to feel that you're out of the control. So, way in which, first of all, we need to identify the areas of stress. Sometimes it's apparent, but sometimes it's not apparent because we're just doing, we're too busy. We're just running around, so we're not aware of those primary stressors. This I find, doing a wheel of life in terms of getting your life and breaking it down into segments, and then assessing you as to self-rating as to where you're at in each of those segments. And you'll generally find where you're putting a lot of energy, that might be going well, or that might not be going so well. But this is essentially you rating yourself of how you feel you're going in each of those segments. And then you can see here that, if you're putting a lot of time into business, I know when I do a lot of time into business, there's other areas that suffer, the significant relationship can suffer, the family can suffer, it might not be as fun. So it's always good to do this assessment as to where is the stresses, where can I operate, or what can I do in order to support that area? Because if you're doing it all here and spending all your time here, and this, you might be excelling in business, but these other areas are suffering, and longer term, this is going to, create an event that is going to be misfortune. So now into the coping mechanisms, what we can do. So I love this 4A approach to a stress. And the first one is that thing of, well, do I invite that into my life? Have I got a choice here to invite that stress into my life? And I guess the things I'm talking about is those, everyone's demanding a bit of your time. You got your boss, your employer is demanding some of your time. You've got your, there'll be families, there'll be friends, there'll be other commitments, other responsibilities you have, and you've got all this demand of time. And it really comes down to priority. What's most important to you? And it's connecting to why are you doing it? That's, you question yourself, do I really need to go to this event? Is it for someone else, or am I doing it for me? And a lot of this we can be doing for other people. We had a little chat at the start about, there's only women in this room. We've actually got a guy. You want to come in? You sure? Just to balance out the the hormones. The point I was making is women struggle. They want, typically, I'm generalising, and so when I'm speaking, I'm generalising, is they want to please others, and this whole pleasing is giving a lot of yourself for others, and not looking after yourself in return. And so this whole avoid thing is, what I've got this part of my life's really busy, I've got this work deadline. Family's important to me, so I'm going to prioritise those two areas. But do I really need to go to that social function? Is that, or yes, I'm going to go there because I'm doing it for me, and then that's important. But if you're doing it for someone else, you might want to question it. And so it's working out, this thing is what's priority, what's important, putting yourself, as a priority, and working out what you go to and what you don't go to. Or your boss might get, you're swamped with work. He might throw you another task, and then it's this thing of, time to have a conversation about, no, look, when am I supposed to do that? You've asked me to do this. I've got this deadline. When do you expect me to fit this in? And so it's having that upfront conversation. And this brings us to that altering the situation. So, it's your boss. You want to keep your employment, or you do like your work. You just got to better manage this situation, this stressful situation. And so an important thing is, how can you alter that situation? And we can do a negotiation. So it's obviously putting your position out there and open, and let your boss know exactly where you stand, and then he can better understand your situation, and then then you can have that discussion as well. How about, could my colleague help out here? Or, oh yes, I can do that, but I can't have a major part in that project. I need a less of a role. So there's this whole altering situation where you negotiate, you express yourself, and seek more balance. And then there's those situations that are non-negotiable. You're in it, right? And it could be that university assignment or that work deadline that you've been working on, that you've got this big event that you've been planning for. And so then it becomes adapting to that stress. You need to obviously accept that it is what it is. That deadline will pass eventually. How am I going to best allow myself to get through this without breaking down? And so I'm going to get to some of those strategies next around this adaptation to that stress, because there's no choice in the matter. However, we can reframe how we think of it, as opposed to seeing it as a big burden and a big stress. We can, reframe that thinking about, I'm doing this because of these reasons, I'm really connected to these reasons, and this is why I'm in this situation, this is why it's non-negotiable. So it's really looking at the positive, and it's, then painting a positive picture of that event being successful, as opposed to looking at all the negatives and all the things that can go wrong. So we can really adapt to that and look for the positive in the situation. And this pretty much leads into this fourth point, is the acceptance of either the situation that I cannot control, Or, you know, like when Donald Trump got elected president, you know, there was people really upset about that. But what can you do about it? You get what I mean? What's the point of being upset? You know, there's nothing you can do, and it's sort of changing the thinking around that and looking for the good if there's good to look for. But this one is like those things where I guess things may have happened, and it's really a matter of accepting that event for what happened. That, you know, someone might have treated you badly, or, you know, there was, you know, something bad's happened to you, and it's sort of not dwelling on it, but accepting that it's happened, it's been done. I'm not, because if you want, you can drag that event with you for life and carry it on with you forever, or you can decide that accept it, that it's happened. I'm going to move myself on from that, and this is what I've learned from it. So it's looking for what good has come out of that event, and it may require, you know, forgiving someone, and, you know, to move on from these situations may require you going back to that person that, you know, you had that misunderstanding with, and just acknowledging it and acknowledging the way you behaved, and, you know, and saying, look, I apologise for what I did, and, you know, then that can allow you to move on, because then they see it from your point of view, and, you know, that relationship may not be perfect going forward, but at least you're not carrying that burden mentally with you forever. So really important that, you know, you I guess accept things for what they are and allow yourself to move on. Any questions around these 4 A's around coping with stress that's in our life? Makes sense, or anything that's not clear?
Is it sort of like a sequence that will accept as the last resort, or would you go directly there?
It really comes to priorities and making sure that whatever the stress is, that there's a reason, you know, that you're taking that on, as opposed to, I mean, and again, it will this will be interwound, because, for example, you may be taking on someone else's stress to help that person, but it's best to reframe that as you're doing it in the best interest of that person. You're taking a bit of a burden on, but you're doing it for someone that you love, or something like that. Or you are taking on that big work project because you want that promotion. You know, so it's really looking at the positive and thinking why, you know, do I take this extra stress on, or do I resist it? And can I resist it? Or is it, and then it's a matter of, well, if I accept it, then, you know, I've got to adapt, you know, then work out how I'm going to manage myself successfully through this period of extra stress. Is that? Yeah, so it's probably bits and pieces of this. So now onto the more prevention side of things, and this is around, I guess, optimal performance. So that, you know, in order, you know, if you've got stressful events happening in your life, how do you actually navigate your way through it really successfully without breaking down? It comes down to, and so this is a self-care wheel, right? And this is going to look different to everyone. You know, it's very individual to the person, and it's something that's worthwhile taking away from today. Is what are the things that really nourish you? And that's different to what will nourish me or nourish one of your friends. But what's really important to you, and it's really looking at these areas. And, you know, so obviously there's an element of what you put into your mouth is going to nourish you, and, you know, obviously some things aren't going to nourish you. But it's not the whole pie, it's a part of the pie. And then, you know, generally, I mean, studies will prove this over and over again, that, you know, this human connection is so important, and we often, in times of stress, like particularly work stress, we're so driven on that task, we forget about those around us. We neglect, you know, we may neglect our friends, we may neglect our family, we may neglect our significant other, you know, that really important relationship. And so this is actually just reminding you all these things that are important, and then to actually factor them into your day, or into your week, or into your month. So it comes down to this, yes, you've got to look after yourself, because not everyone's going to be looking out for you. You know, particularly in that corporate setting, it's more about, you know, if it's driven around numbers and profit, then obviously, that is changing, that mindset, but certainly you need to make sure that you put yourself as the number one priority. So just some of these areas, like obviously, important areas that exercise. So exercise allows us to switch between these, this stress state and this relaxed state. So the more exercise we do, the better adaptation we can move between being stressed and relaxed. Laughter is just, it's often forgotten about today in today's stressed society. We're so serious, we've got to get this task done. We miss having the fun on the journey. So how can you bring in fun into what you do, into your work environment? If it's not in your work environment, then how can you seek it externally? So, taking yourself to a comedy show or watching something that, or just ringing up a friend that makes you laugh all the time, just putting aside some time to catch up with that person that always, looks at the lighter side of life. There's obviously, the element of music, and, music's therapy. This particular music that will just relax you and really switch you out of that stress state. There's things you can do around just caring for self, such as getting a massage or, getting some treatment, acupuncture, getting your hair done, anything that makes you feel good. It's just making sure this is in your life and you're doing it on a regular basis. So prioritising, putting time aside. Connecting with nature is a great way to get grounded. Do you think how disconnected we are from nature these days? We're very much in these concrete buildings, reinforced concrete, surrounded by all this radiation from not only their lights but our phones. We're constantly being bombarded with radiation, which is a stress on the body. I've been speaking a lot about other stressors, but there's environmental stresses that are coming from the environment that we're in. There's pollution, there's toxins from pesticides. So this whole thing of connecting with nature, we're getting in fresh air and breathing in fresh air is phenomenal. It makes us alive, it relaxes us. Just walking in nature, being using our senses, to touch the ground, actually feeling the grass under your feet or the sand under your feet is very therapeutic in itself. Having pets, patting a pet, an animal, is quite therapeutic. And then contributing, giving back to society. So what is it in your life where you can give? And that element of giving because you want to give is very, you're doing it for you because it makes you feel good, but it's also the receiving person's feeling great. And so it's that win-win, and you get that feedback and that great loop of, thank you for doing that. And you feel good about doing it and you want to do more of it. Any questions about creating your own self-care pie chart? Something you could do, something you'd like to do, something you're already doing? So this is one of these ways in which we can constantly move between the different tasks of the day successfully. And this is really, has anyone heard of the third space? No? Dr. Adam Fraser? Okay, so Dr. Adam Fraser is a performance coach. So what he does is look at, exceptional people and what makes them so good at what they do and what are the behaviours that they exhibit on a regular basis that makes them a high performer. And so a particular study he did was on the elite tennis players, and he studied the top 100 tennis players and looked at why the top 10 was so much better than the rest of the field. And what he found in this study, it wasn't their agility or their power or their fitness. They generally had that across the board, across the top 100. But what set them apart was what these players did between the points of the match. So that space between the points. So you either lost the point or won the point. It's what they're doing before the next point that makes them so exceptional. So those really good players, such as Federer and Nadal, they have a setback in that point, it didn't go their way. But they can reset themselves ready for the next point and they'll win that point back. So he talks about introducing, this third space, moving between different tasks or different hats that we wear during the day. So at home we may have this husband or wife or partner hat, or father hat or mother hat, and then we come to work and we're putting on our professional hat, and then we go out and play with our friends, we're putting on our friend's hat. So it's just shifting between the various tasks. And so what he's talking about is the shift between work and home, and it's what we do between here that gets us in the best state to be able to perform at our optimal in this next task that we're about to take on. So just say if we had a stressful day at work, it's actually doing something here to avoid taking that stress home and creating the stress in the home environment. So you've got this propagating stressful situation. You've got stress at work, you've got stress at home, you can't get away from it, and you can't sleep at night because your life's so stressful, so there's no escaping the stress. So he talks about find your third space. What is it that's going to de-stress you between what you're doing? So between going from work to home. So this third space for some people can be that exercise. So on the way home they go to the gym. They let out all their frustrations of the day at the gym. Or they go for that walk along the ocean, or go for a swim down the beach, or do whatever works for them in terms of being able to switch out of this stress state and then put that home hat on and come into a wonderful home setting because you're coming in with the right attitude. And you can do this between meetings. So you can go from a different, you might be attending a supply chain meeting and now you're going to a marketing meeting, requires you to wear different hats. That supply chain meeting might not have went well, but why take that bad into the next meeting and not perform well there? And so it's what are you going to do between those two meetings? And it's that you've probably heard of that mindfulness activities. And mindfulness is not just meditation. There's many ways in which we can do mindfulness. Mindfulness is just letting go of thoughts that are coming in, and embracing space in our minds. So it's releasing thoughts, allowing them to come in but pass through and not grab hold of them. And you can do this by obviously just your sensories, connecting with your senses. So actually feeling your bottom on the seat. But think about that now, like actually feeling that you're actually sitting on a seat that's supporting you. Feeling your feet on the ground, feeling your breath go in and out, connecting with that. So you can really just connect with your senses and become very grounded and mindful and present and get clear what happened before, so that where you go into the next task, you're going in prepared, ready, a new person. And we need to do this throughout the day, and we can be performing at our best whilst managing our stress throughout the day, as opposed to carrying our stress throughout the day. So it's really identifying what you can do in this space. And it may just be getting some fresh air. It may be just getting out of this building before the next meeting, going out to Martin Place, just taking some deep breaths, coming back in and, resetting. So it's what works for you. Has anyone got something they want to share that really works for them in terms of resetting, getting present?
Yeah, sometimes I get meditate when I go to work out in a cafe or somewhere.
Yeah, no, it's great. It is. It is. Shifting that environment, so changing that environment is really helpful. It can just be getting up and walking and moving and, and doing that regularly throughout the day. That whole sense of movement, connects us back with our senses. So it's really becoming, finding ways to get yourself present. And this is something that requires practice. So it's not something that comes overnight. The more you practice it, the better it gets. So it's really just finding time and doing it and realizing that at the end of the day, busyness doesn't make us more successful. It's performing at our best. And to perform at our best, we need that space. We need that clarity in mind. If we've got all these thoughts that are all going over, we're taking all those home conversations into our workplace and all these past conversations, how can we think clearly to make good decisions at the workplace? So it's really being able to clear that mind and create that space. So you can look up Dr. Adam Fraser, and he's got a great TED talk on this, and talks about some different ways in which you can find your third space. So this is, I find, generally people, find that the whole breathing thing is very easy to do, and not associating with, some form of meditation. Some people find that a bit overwhelming, because I guess their vision of meditation is a Buddhist monk or something like that, and doing the mantras and stuff like that. So, for me, it is, this really what helps me. This is what I do, by taking, because when we get stressed, we tend to breathe quite shallow, and you can alter that state by just taking in some deep breaths and getting the whole diaphragm expanded, and that can really you can just feel really at peace and relaxed from just doing those deep breaths.
You might have the fact that you've got oxygen that's coming in your body as well.
It does, absolutely. It's eliminating carbon dioxide, getting rid of toxins, because our lungs expel toxins. When we're just shallow breathing rapidly, we're hardly getting that expansive exchange of taking in oxygen and removing carbon dioxide. So absolutely, so from a physiological point of view, it makes a big difference. And I don't know if anyone's had pure oxygen before. You suck in pure oxygen, and you're alert, you're awake, and so this just a whole connection with breath, getting out of our head, getting into our body. We spend so much time up here, and we're not connecting the two. And a lot of our problems associated with down here was a result of not creating space up here. So I'm going to get onto some of that shortly. The other great thing is, this is particularly, I guess women are better at this than men, but I must say in today's world that's probably changing a bit. I think people are less likely to express their vulnerability because, they're scared that it might result in a job loss or it might result in something detrimental if you're vulnerable, like saying, look, to your manager that, I'm suffering at the moment, I'm suffering a lot of anxiety, some people fear that conversation, and what I'm, certainly endorse is the more open you are, the more vulnerable you are, the more help is going to come your way. And, I've lived this through personal experience, and certainly withholding information, withholding feelings is only going to eat you up. It's going to, affect you physiologically, and mentally, and it will cause this, it leads to insomnia, and leads to chronic illness eventually. So the more we can find that trusted network of people, and there's all sorts of support groups out there. I'm involved with the Banksia Project, which is a men's space for men to come along and to express vulnerability and to share what's going on. And I find that, as a facilitator, I'm also a participant. I find that very, it's helped me a lot. But just expressing, talking about that bad day, having someone you can chat about, unfortunate events, and letting it go. This helps that relinquishment, taking it out from you and releasing it. So always think about, who's that support network, really nurture those relationships. They're the ones that are most important to you. It's not about the number, it's about the quality.
I was just thinking, is there something that you think we should do with teenagers or kids that could prepare them to not feel like we feel nowadays? Like, is there something that we can start doing
For teenagers?
in the early stages?
Yeah. And I think it comes from parents being vulnerable. Like, it's like, not thinking that they're not, they're bulletproof. So the more we express vulnerability, the person in front of us is going to express their vulnerability. You open up and you create deeper relationships. So at some point, obviously, you need to be protective of younger children, and you don't want to be passing on all your stresses to them because they don't have that resilience yet. But certainly as they get older, I think it is having that open conversation. It's really opening the airways. The more open we have, and also letting them know that you're always there for them. And this is this whole thing. Like the biggest thing, I guess, for teenagers and us today is to be present, because we often are with people, but we're not present. We're not engaged. We're not actually hearing what they're saying. We're not doing that active listening. And so what I suggest, when you have, you're sitting down with someone, put away that mobile device, because it's a distraction to sit sitting there, because the person's thinking, well, what's more important is you waiting on something, or the person in front of you, So I think the more we can be present, the more we can disconnect from our devices, and actually being really disciplined. I find one of the best tips around this is taking control of social media, not being a consumer or stuck in that vortex. So you choosing when you're going to dial in. And being very disciplined about that. Don't think that you need to respond to every message. One of my New Year's resolutions, I switched off all incoming messages, because, same with email, for example, because that can be a distraction, right? So I only check email certain periods of the day, but it puts me in control, not the person sending the message. I think it's time to take back control. Put us in. And I recommend that to teenagers, is to actually, there's a close to that device running them and their lives. You often see teenagers sitting together, there's no conversation, they're all talking through their devices. It is incredible. It's just bizarre, it's talk about lack of disconnection, severe disconnection. The more we can disconnect and take control, the better off we are, and the more open and more vulnerable we express, the better we are. We actually our relationships get stronger. As much as you think being open creates you're showing weakness, it actually develops stronger relationships. And having those hard conversations are often the best conversations. Those ones that you've always put off and not have are often the best conversations and the most productive conversations, and it often reveals misunderstanding. So don't put off those conversations, make it a priority, have those conversations. You'll feel better as a result of it. It's a bit slow, this lag. So in terms of prevention, it really is doing something in all aspects of your health. It's not just focusing on one area, and we can get very carried away today thinking food's going to be the answer to everything. If I take this particular diet, if I eat this superfood, everything's going to be solved. It's rubbish. It's doing parts of all holistic health, all facets of our well-being, such as I mentioned, connection's critical. We cannot, people that are lonely are often, they're very anxious, they're so loneliness is not the answer, withdrawing is not the answer, connection is. Obviously addressing, things like you're going to do for your mental health, and we went through a lot of that today. So under stressful deadlines, what we tend to do is put all our efforts into work and think more hours we put into work. Not true. And there's plenty of research showing that you don't work well under stress. And so the more we can do in terms of looking after ourselves, the more we're going to be at our absolute best. Putting aside that time for exercise and making it a non-negotiable. Just as that work deadline's a non-negotiable, exercise during that work deadline is a non-negotiable. And so it's, the best time of the morning, the best time of the day I find is the morning, because there's less demand on your time, there's less incidents that have come up. So during the day, if you put it off to the evening, there's going to be some event that you can latch onto and make that an excuse, right? Whereas in the morning, that's your time. You own that space. And obviously when you're doing everything well, then sleep's so much better. The reason why we're not sleeping is because we're so busy up here. We've got to create the space in our mind in order to fall asleep. Under a stress state, that cortisol, which I mentioned before, that stress hormone, that suppresses melatonin. You think, when you're getting away from that danger or that tiger or whatever, your body is not last thing it's thinking of is sleep. So therefore we don't need that melatonin, which is our sleep hormone. So if you haven't got a nightly routine, I suggest you find a nightly routine. And this nightly routine is that third space I spoke about. So it's going from that busy mind, I've had a busy day, lots of wine, and then allowing that wind down so you can fall asleep. Often what we do is we go from that busy day, go straight to bed and expect to fall asleep. That's not going to happen. All that unwinding's happening in bed, and you're getting frustrated because you're watching that clock and you think, I've got to get up at this hour and I'm not asleep. And that's more stress. So it's actually being, it gets back to that discipline, actually having a regular, our body likes habitual things, good habits. And it's actually forming a habit around your nightly routine. So having a set time you go to bed, and then allowing an hour before that for the third space, that wind down, disconnect from what's happened, disconnect from the devices, removing all these blue lights, removing all this stimulus, such as checking your Facebook and all that sort of stuff. That's all stimulus, and then doing nurturing stuff for you. So that may be having a magnesium bath, it might be using some essential oils, it might be playing some calming music, it might be reading that novel that makes you laugh or relaxes you, it might be doing a gratitude journal, or it could be doing a combination of all the above. So it's really creating a routine that allows you to sleep, because obviously poor sleep is going to affect the next day. You're going to wake up stressed, right? And your body's running on adrenaline, cortisol, and it makes you make poor eating decisions, because when we're stressed, our brain operates, it needs glucose. So what signals are going to be sent from your brain when you're stressed? You're going to be wanting the high GI food, so the food that's high in sugar, highly refined, highly processed. That's the sort of food we go to, we gravitate towards while we're stressed. So if we have a good night's sleep, we're more likely to eat better the next day, make better, healthier decisions. You're not going to dose up on caffeine to get you through the day because you've had a good night's sleep. Is there any questions in particular? Was there anything around nutrition that you really wanted me to cover? My view on nutrition is it's not dieting. Dieting's restricting, taking away certain food groups, which creates nutritional deficiencies. My view of what we should be doing around this is obviously, sticking to basics of whole foods, less processed, seasonal vegetables, as close to the source as possible. So farmers markets and not sitting in, eating kiwi fruits from Italy when it's so eating things that are in season that haven't been flowing in from other countries and actually have a high nutritional value. The closest we are to the source, the higher the nutritional value. Eating a wide variety of different colours, so the rainbow. So a rainbow salad, you've got lots of different colours. I don't want to pick on you, but it's colourful. You got your reds, your oranges, you got your dark leafies, you got different coloured leaves, you got your purples. So that wide variety. Grains are important. There's all this ketone stuff in terms of having this excessively, 70% of your diet coming from fats. That's going to affect our digestion because it's too extreme. It's like swinging the pendulum from one side to the other all the time. This is how we live our lives. So it's really finding that middle ground, finding that balance. So in terms of plates, if this was a plate, it would be half vegetables, and then you've got a quarter of your grains, your carbies, and then a quarter of protein. And then you're meeting all your nutritional needs, not leaving any deficit. Exercise is doing a wide variety of exercises, and it's listening to your body. So if you're very stressed and run down, it's not doing HIIT or high intensity training, right? When you're feeling fatigued. So if you're going to the gym and you're feeling fatigued, it's probably a day you should be doing stretching or lighter sort of cardio or just doing a walk or something like that. Doing these HIIT sessions when you've got energy. So listening to your body, but mixing it up between resistance training, cardio and stretching, having a nice mix. It's all about finding this balance, not doing, you know, extreme sort of CrossFit and forgetting to stretch and not do anything on the cardio side of things. Or nothing light. You need to mix that light and heavy training. Is there any questions from anyone as to have you got something out of today's talk? Yeah? Anything you wanted me to discuss further or go into a bit more? All good. So yeah, as I mentioned at the start of the talk, I'm in my last couple of subjects, last 3 months of my nutritional medicine degree. As part of that, I've got to clock up clinical hours, so I need to be doing seeing people in a supervised clinic. I do my clinic hours at the Well Nation Clinic. We have a special offer, so you can get a holistic nutritional consult. What I mean by holistic is what I discussed today. So what we look at is all aspects of your life, everything that's going on beyond just nutrition. That sort of pie chart I showed you before, we're looking at the whole picture in order to better understand what's going on, because there's no point of just focusing on diet if you've got this major elephant in some sort of stress. You need some coping mechanisms around that stress. Obviously diet will help, but it's not the be on end all. You need some strategies around sleep and stuff. So I do this holistic nutritional consult, $20, an hour and a half, very thorough, and can look at anything from stress, from sleep, from your nutrition. It can be looking at particular conditions, whether you've got skin conditions that are concerning you, whether you got whether there's weight gain or weight loss, you want to look at anything hormonal, any hormonal conditions, any chronic diseases such as type 2 diabetes or anything like that. We can all support those sort of ailments. So feel free to, that's the brochure I put on your seat. You got my details, the details of the clinic. You can either book directly online with the clinic, or you can touch base with me and I can make the booking for you. Thanks very much for attending. I really appreciate it.
Good.
Thank you.